Zoom. There we go. My apologies on that. All right, so getting back to this, I'd like to now introduce Shane Beckham, who is a Senior Investment Officer at the Maine Technology Institute. Shane?
Good morning, everybody. As Karen mentioned, I'm Shane Beckham. I'm a Senior Investment Officer with MTI. I've been with MTI for nearly 18 years now. I'll talk a little bit about the MTI mission and what our role is here in the state of Maine and how you might access some MTI funding. So first off, our mission statement resides here. You can read that for yourself, but know that MTI was created in 1999. So we've been around for a little bit more than 22 years now. With tremendous success in the entrepreneurial community and supporting small businesses grow here in the state of Maine with the sole purpose of creating economic impact. That's the main reason MTI was created so long ago in conjunction with some of our partner organizations. We're one of the tools in the state's tool belt to be able to put to work to help small businesses and large businesses now and entrepreneurs grow and create new and exciting jobs here in the state of Maine. Next slide. Karen, I'll have to rely on you to move the slide. Oh, there they go, a little slow. So there's a little bit about our track record. You can see over the past 20 plus years, I believe we've now put nearly $300 million, well, about $285 million to work over the past 22 years. And that money, because it does require a matching contribution and a matching investment by the applicants for the investments that MTI makes, has now leveraged over $1 billion in matching investment in that time frame. So you can see we've already begun, before even creating the residual impacts of the investment, leverage a significant amount of co-investment into the state. Before MTI was created, we ranked very low, in fact, near the bottom in investment into research and development in the state. So investing in R&D and early stage companies and early stage innovations has turned around a pretty significant yield and a return on that investment over the course of 22 years. Next slide. Maybe it's maybe a little slow on my end, Karen.
Yeah.
So sort of how does this work? MTI funds everything from initial idea all the way up through sustainability. It's an iterative process working with entrepreneurs and companies, including companies that might have been around for a while that are continuing to innovate and develop new and innovative technologies. Generally, the way it works is a company, an entrepreneur comes up with the idea, they begin to do some research, they discover whether or not there's some elements of what they're working on that might be applicable to the market that they're pursuing. They continue to research and develop new and improved methodologies and innovations, developing that technology and bringing it all the way through to commercialization, bringing that product to market. And then ultimately, the bigger challenge is sustainability, growing that company, making sure they're able to maintain revenues, grow their size and source of their revenues, and add jobs to become a sustainable company here in the state of Maine. So that's the reason we deploy the funding that we deploy. We fund particularly innovative technologies through small projects leading to escalating investments into the company. Next slide. So how do we determine who we should fund or what we should fund? Well, MTI uses a tool called the Venture Investment Readiness Assessment Level, which is a viral level. This was created by a venture capital firm some years ago and introduced by MTI back in 2018. And using the viral tool, the early stage companies are eligible for what we call range one investment of up to $25,000, all the way up through $250,000 or more for companies that are in projects that are later stage, that are entering or on the market, that are generating revenue, that have gained some market traction, and are looking to grow and sustain their impact as they progress. So learning a little bit about the viral assessment will be critical when you engage with MTI. Next slide. So how does this process work? Very similar to the way Karen introduced the SBIR TAP engagement. That's the same way it works with the MTI investment team. So the investment process starts by visiting maintechnology.org, clicking on Get Started and submitting an intake form. At that point, you'll be invited to meet with your investment officer who will be assigned to work with you. They'll be your sort of personal escort through the process, and they'll be your coach and advisor, in addition to the individual who will primarily conduct the due diligence on the opportunity that you're proposing within your application. So once you submit an application, there are no deadlines. You would be invited to apply for a particular range of funding in a particular scope of work. That application is submitted by you, the applicant, at your leisure. It is put through a review process that can go from 3 weeks for range 1 all the way up through about 2 months for range 4 for the larger investment. Obviously, the more money you're seeking, the longer and more in-depth the due diligence will be. A decision will be made either internally by MTI investment committee or staff, or it'll elevate to the board of directors for a final decision, and then you will go on and conduct your project and provide reporting at the completion, and in some cases throughout the duration of your project. And then once you're completed that and you're seeking your next stage of funding, it just starts all over again with the process at the beginning, and you'll have the conversation about what the next stage of funding would look like and what's most appropriate again at that stage, and you go through the exact same process yet again. But at that point, you'll be having been working with your investment officer, who will become very familiar with your company and your project and your effort moving forward. Next slide. So what are we looking for in terms of applicants to MTI? Well, certainly we want applicants who share the same goals as MTI. They need to be innovative and forward thinking, and they need to be a Maine-based organization. So what we are looking for are teams and companies and efforts that are going to be taking place here in Maine, but more importantly, those that are generating economic impact to Maine. The innovation needs to fall within one of our 7 targeted technology sectors. They are very broadly defined. So if you're truly working on something that's innovative, it's very likely you'll fall within one of those 7 targeted technology sectors. And all applicants must meet the 1-to-1 matching threshold. And the way we kind of look at it is it's a co-investment. So MTI is not the only one taking the risk on these projects, that the entrepreneur and the company is also sharing in some of that risk, but also that we're leveraging additional investment through the use of our funds when we do invest in these projects and these companies. So those are the core criteria at a very high level as to what would minimally qualify a company or entrepreneur for seeking funding from MTI. Next slide. We then utilize the evaluation criteria to determine whether or not the application is most appropriate and should be considered for MTI funding. All of these areas are also shared within the viral assessment, but they're categorized here in 5 sections. Certainly economic impact is right at the top, because that's the purpose MTI was created, to be able to execute on the project and to make sure that our investment is in good hands and that it's going forward with the best resources available. The team is a key criteria at the base level of all of the elements of the viral assessment as well. We look at the degree of innovation and the value proposition, making sure that there is a need for it in the market and that customers see value in the innovation when you're proposing to develop a solution to a particular problem. Evaluating those customers and that market opportunity to make sure it's sufficient and significant enough to warrant investment for potential growth. It is our goal to understand your business model as to how you plan on growing that technology within the company and growing the company as a whole. And then lastly, that the scope of work and budget that you're proposing are appropriate and fit the need of the company at the stage that you would be submitting the application. So those are the elements of the due diligence and the review that we look into when considering these funding requests. And we've done a pretty nice job in recent years in laying out a funding request that specifically addresses each of these areas, almost like a template, a Q&A template when you do submit an application. So it walks you right through each of these sections for you to address within an application. So it makes the funding request a lot more streamlined and easier to understand. Next slide.
I think that's it.
Okay, so if you're interested in seeking MTI funding and you have something that's new and innovative, my advice would be, if you're working on SBIR, finish with that process with an eye towards maybe applying for MTI. If you get SBIR funding, that's a great source of match to MTI funding. So for example, if a range 1 comes in and you receive $100,000 or $150,000 for approval, that's a great way to fund, to match potential funding against one or multiple MTI application requests over the period of your SBIR project. And then you can consider how you continue to use SBIR funding moving forward, whether it's in phase 2 or trying to fill in the gaps in between your SBIR projects, and how MTI funding might be able to fill those gaps while all along the way using the SBIR funding as match. So it's a good partner program where we can utilize the SBIR resources and the MTI resources to continually fund companies that are pursuing new innovations. So consider that as you're moving forward. And if you'd like to learn more about that, again, visit maintechnology.org and feel free to speak with an investment officer like myself. So I'm happy you can email me or give MTI a call. Our contact information is available on our website. I don't want to interrupt Karen's presentation here today. You'll have an opportunity to maybe ask more questions as you go along, but feel free to reach out to us and the staff at MTI. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shane. Yeah, I really encourage everyone, excuse me, to visit maintechnology.org. Under, I think it is What We Fund, is where you'll find several pages for the SBIRSTTR program. And under What We Fund, it says Federal Funding Assistance, and it will be the SBIRSTTR program. You'll be able to find this recording and other previous webinars on that site, and also information and links to the federal agencies' specific SBIRSTTR pages, which is important because, as Joanne, I'm sure we'll talk about, you never judge an agency by its name, and that in many cases you can submit your proposal to more than one agency. So with that, it's just, we're a little bit early, but I think that's a good thing. I will be monitoring the chat box. So if you have questions, please put them into the chat box, and then at strategic points, I think throughout Joanne's presentation, we'll stop and do a Q&A. So Joanne, I would say let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen now and hope that that works. So far, so good. Okay. I'm going to minimize this. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I've actually never heard Shane give this overview. I've heard Karen give an overview, but this is an amazing amount of resources that are available to you all. So that's pretty exciting. I hope that you're able to avail yourselves of some of those opportunities. I'm thrilled to do this webinar today. I just want to give a little bit of background for the many of you who don't know me. I spent about 25 years in the federal government, most of which was at NIH, and most of that managing the SBIR and STTR programs. I was also a researcher at the National Cancer Institute for about 10 years. I had a short stint at FDA and 3 or 4 years at USDA when I was a co-op student at Virginia Tech. And I also have worked with many of the other agencies through interagency initiatives. So I've gotten to know a number of colleagues there, and also sort of sorting out their cultures versus NIH's culture. I spent about 10 years in a nonprofit and for-profit environments, the most recent of which was the Jackson Laboratory, where I was director of sponsored research. I was VP of research at a small biotech company in Texas and a program manager in a small Florida-based consulting company where everybody was virtual pre-COVID. And that was actually working with large Fortune 500 companies who wanted to use federal funding to kind of offset some of their risky projects. My science background is in cancer genetics, microbiology, and immunology. So that's my little brief CV. For today, our objectives are really to give you a very, very quick refresher on SBIR and STTR, because I'm going to assume that most of you know what it's about. And then go into a program review, a review of the NIH SBIR and STTR programs. Just a little bit about some changes in the forms that you need to fill out to obtain this funding. I'll spend a bit of time on the application elements that we won't have time today to go through each and every component, but I'll highlight the most important ones. Give a little brief overview on the review process, but know that there's a webinar coming up that just focuses on NIH's peer review. Talk about communicating with NIH and leave you with some resources, and we should have time to answer your questions. And I did see some of the questions that came in advance. So the SBIR and STTR programs are congressionally mandated programs where the set aside is now up to 3.2% for SBIR and 0.45% for STTR. And this is setting aside funds that the agencies would otherwise use for other types of R&D. Now, for what that means for NIH, that's about $1.2 billion set aside for this SBIR and STTR combined. The goals are to stimulate technological innovation, to help agencies meet their R&D needs, to increase commercialization of innovation that's derived from federal R&D funding, to foster and encourage participation and innovation in innovation and entrepreneurship by women and socially or economically disadvantaged individuals, and for STTR specifically to foster that tech transfer component through a cooperative R&D between small businesses and research institutions. So the critical differences, because we're often asked, well, which mechanism should I go for, SBIR or STTR? SBIR permits partnering where STTR requires that there be a nonprofit research institution partner. There's also differences with respect to the work requirement, where in SBIR, you don't have to outsource any of the work, although very frequently you will have to because you might not have all of the resources in-house. So in phase 1, you can outsource about 1/3 of the work, and in phase 2, up to 50% of the work. Now in STTR, you're required to meet these requirements where the small business must perform at least 40% of the work, the research institution has to perform at least 30%, and the other 30% can be divided up between those two. And the third difference relates to the principal investigator. Under SBIR, the PI's primary place of employment must be with the small business at the time of award. That's a very important point. And under STTR, for NIH, the PI can be employed by either the research institution or the small business. Now, other agencies will have perhaps some nuances to that, but know that for NIH, they allow the PI to have employment at either place. What's important to understand is that the award always goes to the small business. So even under STTR, The small business is the applicant and ultimately the awardee. Okay, so let's move in more specifically to NIH. I always like to start with the NIH mission, which is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. Now, the small business programs really help NIH accelerate those discoveries from bench to bedside through the phases that we'll just talk about. NIH is a big, complex place. As I said, I was there for a number of years, and I was on the inside, and I can tell you it was complex. There are 27 different institutes and centers, 24 of whom have funding authority and make awards through the SBIR and STTR programs. The ones that don't are places like the Clinical Center, the Center for Information Technology, and the Center for Scientific Review, who will ultimately organize the review and arrange for you understanding what the outcome of your project is. So it's one NIH, but 27 different cultures. I mean, there are many different cultures among all the other agencies, DOD, NSF, USDA, et cetera. But even within NIH, each has its own mission, their own budget, and therefore success rates differ, their own activities and program priorities, and certainly their own way of doing business. So you're in the right place to learn the myriad nuances. Now, not every institute or center has the same budget. So this is all broken down by how Congress appropriates the budget. The top 5 in terms of budget are the National Cancer Institute, Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the National Institute on Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, National Institute of General Medical Sciences, and the Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Disorders. Now, I said the top 5. The one that has snuck in there is the National Institute on Aging. So cancer, NIAID, aging, heart, lung, and blood, general med, and digestive and kidney disorders. Aging has gotten a lot of funding owing to increased support for Alzheimer's disease. It also looks from fiscal year 2020 that the Neurology Institute is running a close call with NIDDK. So that's not to say you shouldn't go for other funding in some of the other institutes. If your area of interest is natural products, I saw one of the questions that came up, then you're likely to fall in one of these smaller centers, which is NCCIH. And so don't be discouraged that while they don't have much funding, because often they also don't get as many applications. So that leads me to talk about success rates. The success rates will vary by institute, but I've just given you the higher level success rate here. For phase 1s last year in 2020, they don't have the 2021 data out yet. Phase 1 applicants had a 12.4% success rate. Phase 1 STTRs had a 17.4% success rate. And then phase 2 was 25.7 for SBIR and 27.3 for STTR. So once you get that phase 1, you've got a really strong chance of moving into phase 2. And then there are other types of phases that NIH offers that have their respective success rates listed here, which is a nice segue to this slide. I know you've typically heard about, well, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Well, at NIH, there's some additional opportunities through this development from idea to commercialization. So phase 1 is still that discovery phase where you're establishing feasibility and proof of concept. for your idea or technology. Phase 2 is the full R&D stage. NIH also offers Fast Track, which is the phase 1, phase 2 combination platter. They also offer direct to phase 2 for SBIR only, where you may have done feasibility work on your own nickel within your own company, and now you're ready to move directly to phase 2. So that's a possibility there. Understanding that not all of the institutes and centers offer that. Then there's a phase 2B, or a competing renewal award, the Commercialization Readiness Program, and my next slide is going to kind of break those out in more depth for those who want to learn more about it. But phase 3 then is the commercialization stage, where the government isn't going to, or SBIR is not going to support that phase, but some agencies will actually procure what it is you're buying. For example, DoD is that kind of commercialization partner. NIH is rarely, if ever, going to be that commercialization partner for you. So you need to think about how you're going to commercialize at the end of your feasibility and development stages. Award amounts also vary among agencies. So for NIH, the phase 1 is now about $275,766 for 1 to 2 years. Phase 2s are up to $1.8 million for 1 to 3 years. And NIH has received a waiver from the Small Business Administration that enables them to go above those budgets. And if that is the case, they will note that in their specific funding opportunity. So this chart just kind of more specifically lays out the various program phases, and I've included some links if you want to go through and learn more about the phase 2B program or the Commercialization Readiness Program. And I'm assuming that, Karen, you're going to share my slide deck with all of the attendees, or post it online, or both.
Yes.
There's also a technical assistance and entrepreneurial training program. These are the TABA that provide support for both phase 1 and phase 2. It might be that you have a needs assessment that could be done, get some consulting services. There's even more entrepreneurial training and assistance through the NIH I Core Program, the Concept to Clinic Commercializing Innovation Program for medical devices. And there's even a diversity supplement if you are helping to encourage or support diverse populations. So again, I've included hyperlinks to these so that we don't have time today to go through each and every one, but you'll be able to access these links and get more information. Now, the NIH website has been recently redone. It's very, very nice. In fact, it not only has a new look, but it's just easier to find things. And so, you know, one place, for example, if you want to find funding, you can go to the link there, and it will take you to one place that lists all of the SBIR and STTR funding opportunities. They're not, you know, the NIH guide is typically the way for NIH to alert you about funding, and that still exists, but this has now culled out just the SBIR and STTR opportunities. And there's a lot, there's frequently asked questions, there's all kinds of information on how to apply, how to navigate research areas among the different institutes and centers. So very, very nice retooling of their website. So I've talked a little bit about funding opportunity announcements. It's important to understand some differences because the way these are released could be confusing. So there's the parent announcement. This is the omnibus solicitation that most of you will be using. These are broad FOAs that allow you to submit investigator-initiated ideas, or while everything is solicited now, these are what they used to call unsolicited research ideas, because they're ideas coming from you. These are typically open for 3 years and have standard receipt dates. Now compare that to RFAs, or requests for applications, where the institute says, this is exactly what we're interested in. And so it identifies specific scientific areas, what amount of set-aside funds, now you have a set-aside within a set-aside, the anticipated number of awards to be made. There's usually only one receipt date versus the multiple ones for parent announcements. And also importantly, the institute is usually the one who is convening the review panel versus the Center for Scientific Review. And then there's program announcements, PAs, PARs, PASs, which highlight high priority areas of interest. They're a little different than an RFA. So the PAR has special receipt dates. A PA is typically open for 3 years, like a parent announcement, but it's going to say, this is kind of an area we want to focus on. Now this PAS, it throws a ringer into things because it's kind of like an RFA. It's a program announcement with a set aside of funds. So it can get confusing, but you don't have to worry about any of that. When you see something that looks of interest scientifically, then that's when you can come to Karen and myself and the TAP team and really better understand which of these announcements is most appropriate. The other important point with PAs or program announcements is that most of the NIH institutes participate in these as compared to RFAs, where maybe it's just one institute who is sponsoring it. So here I've given you some general solicitations for SBIR and STTR and hyperlinks for those. You have to keep clear or keep separate whether or not you're doing a clinical trial or not doing a clinical trial, and that's what's going to drive which of these solicitations you would select. The contract solicitation is currently not open. It usually comes out in August with a close date sometime in November. And then, as I mentioned, the NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts is a way for you to get a weekly update. You can subscribe to their listserv and keep track of the various announcements that are coming out, as well as notices on policy changes, forms changes, etc. So there are so many pages in the omnibus solicitation. You can search it, pull up the PDF, do Control F and search on your keyword. But I'll just give you an example because a question came up. Does NIH fund anything in digital health? Well, for example, the NCI has a very specific topic of interest. It says digital health tools and software platform for cancer-related technologies. But there are others: therapeutics, in vitro and in vivo diagnostics, imaging technologies, etc. And this is just one institute, and then they go into more depth about these. So I could not put every solicitation topic up here, or that would have been hundreds and hundreds of slides. Digital health. So another example, through the National Institute on Drug Abuse, digital health technologies to address the social determinants of health in the context of substance use disorders. So again, I'm just showing examples where I did a keyword search on these terms, and this is what I came up with. Another question had to do with the funding of natural products. And this is where I mentioned in that little pie chart, you're likely going to fall into the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, or NCCIH. They fund so much work in the area of natural products because that's kind of where their mission lies. Very quickly on submissions. So all grant applications and contract proposals must be submitted electronically. And you have to have a number of these required registrations that Karen mentioned. I will say a couple of things here. One is start early with those registrations. It can take several weeks to get through all of the various steps. And the second point is contracts are, while grants are submitted through grants.gov and ERA Commons, contracts have their own website, which is this last bullet that I've provided. Okay, so NIH did announce a major change in this UEI. It's a unique entity identifier that any application going in after January 25th must have a UEI. And that's now replacing the DUNS on all of the forms and forms packages. So if you're currently registered in SAM, you've already been issued this UEI, but note that the DUNS is still required for new registrants prior to April 2022. And then that UEI will be issued as part of the registration. Organizations will see their UEI in the ERA Commons institutional profile early in January 22. So that should be visible to you at this point. And then, you know, it's just important to use the correct form set, especially while the NIH is in this transition of Forms F to Forms G. It's so easy for you to start working on one set and then you forget to go back in and download the right form set. So my recommendation there is, most of you are probably looking anyway now at April 5th at the earliest. Just wait until after January 25th to download any forms. I've provided you also a link to an annotated form set, which is really helpful for you just to see how each of the fields are to be filled out, and there's information that you can click on within the field. So if you're first starting, this is just a nice little exercise to go through. So again, that's a hyperlink that you can use. Some key changes in the Forms G, as I mentioned, the transition from DUNS to the unique entity identifier. The updated Biosketch is really, really important. And then if you're funded, you'll be asked to provide other support. So other support format has changed. NIH has added a question regarding these technical and business assistance programs. Yes, no, whether or not you're applying for that. And then there's a number of other updates that, that have occurred. So I mentioned we'd go through the application elements. I wish I could move. I guess I can move this. I don't know how I can move that out of the way. Hold on one second. Oops, don't hit leave. Just like over my over my header. Anyway, NIH application elements. There are probably 20, maybe a couple more different components that you will have to fill out for your application. Cover page, performance site, the other project information, which includes the project summary, narrative, facilities, other attachments, your senior key personnel, which includes your biosketches, the budget, et cetera, as you see this. So we're going to go through some of these. In more detail. These are more the multi-PI leadership plan if you're doing more than one PI, your bibliography, your consortium and contractual arrangements, letters of support. The list is extensive. Okay, so let's focus on a couple of important ones. The cover page. So I mentioned there's this annotated forms set, and I pulled up just one page to show you how that looks. For example, the UEI says, has now been placed in this upper quadrant on the right side of your cover page. But what I wanted to highlight here is the title, which is item 11. Give a lot of thought to your title. It often is kind of the last thing that you maybe come up with, but you want to have an exciting title. And so that's not to say that reviewers aren't going to look at your application if you don't have one, but it's just a way you can have up to 200 characters. So don't write a book as your title, but have a really exciting one that grabs a reviewer's attention when they're being assigned 15 or so, 10 to 15 proposals. Then there's the other project information, the project summary. Okay, this is your abstract. It's 30 lines of text or less. So that means you're providing a succinct, accurate description of the proposed work. It should be informative to others who are in the same field as you're working, but also understandable to someone who's scientifically literate. You'll want to explicitly state your project's long-term broad objectives, as well as your 2 or 3 specific aims. You'll want to include a very brief description of the how, your research design and methods. Don't include any proprietary or confidential information, because this is going to be made public if your application is funded. So one way to think about this is this kind of structure. Start with the problem, what issue or question will be addressed, give a little on the background, state your specific aims, highlight your approach and any anticipated outcomes, and then end it with your scientific impact. Now, I realize this is all going into 30 lines, but there are ways to do this. And this is one example. This is a project, OncoPath, Intelligent Clinical Pathway Decision Support Tool for Pre-Authorization Documentation in Non-Small Cell Lung Cancer Treatment. Even the title tells you a lot, but they start out with the problem. This is a phase 1, by the way. They start out with the problem, have a 1-sentence background, then go into the significance of the problem. They talk a little bit about the methods and approach. This project focuses on developing an innovative and first-of-a-kind technology for CDS, et cetera, et cetera. Then they go into the aims. The team proposes the following aims: aim 1, aim 2, aim 3, et cetera, and then anticipated outcomes. OncoPath will enable an efficient, oncologist-friendly approach to treatment decisions and documentation, et cetera. This is a really, really well-written abstract that checks all of those boxes that I showed you on this page. Okay, so then we have the project narrative. So this is an example here as well, but this is basically in 2 to 3 sentences, you're communicating the public health relevance of the project. You want to use here plain language that's understandable by a general audience. We used to say, like, at an 8th grade level, now we say staffers, and you might be chuckling, but I'm telling you, staffers who are looking at what agencies are funding or what NIH is funding, they read these public health relevance sections. So make it clear to them. Describe how the research would contribute to the fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems, and or the application of that knowledge. So this is now the mission of NIH, right? Describe how your project is going to meet their mission. And know that if the application is funded, this is also going to become publicly available. A little bit of a delay. There we go. Okay, another area in this section is facilities and other resources. So in here, you want to describe your scientific environment in which your research is going to be carried out. You want to discuss ways in which the proposed studies will benefit from any unique equipment or other features that you have in your facility. Or maybe there are unique human subject populations that you're working with. You want to discuss how studies will employ useful collaborative arrangements. Collaborations are always welcome, as I said, and required for STTR. And then if there are multiple performance sites, you're going to have a section within the facilities that describes theirs in just as much detail. There aren't any page limits to this, so you don't want to give 100-page facilities, but I would also give more than a paragraph. Okay, so that covered the other project information. Now let's talk a minute about senior key personnel, and specifically the Biosketch, because the Biosketch has definitely changed. But the instructions are to briefly describe why you are well suited for the role in this project. And this is not just for the principal investigator, this is for all key personnel. Relevant factors may include your training, your previous experimental work, your technical expertise. And now this is new for NIH. So the sections are in 3 parts: personal statement, positions, scientific appointments and honors, and contributions to science. Section D, which used to say research support, has been eliminated. But in the personal statement instructions, they want you pulling that information in here. So it says, ongoing and completed research projects from the past 3 years that you want to draw attention to, previously captured under research support. So while that section D has been eliminated, the information is still being requested. Science CV, I just want to mention, and this is also a hyperlink. It's a way for you to actually create your Biosketch, and it's something that I think ultimately NIH is going to require applicants to use. They haven't fully gone that way with all grant mechanisms, but I would highly recommend that you start using Science CV. It will make this Biosketch section a lot easier. All right, another application element I wanted to talk about is this commercialization plan, which falls under the SBIRSTTR information section. The commercialization plan, you have up to 12 pages to discuss these bulleted items. What's the value of your project, the expected outcomes and impact, a little bit about your company, describe the market, customer, and competition, any intellectual property protection or how you will protect your IP. You provide a finance plan, a production and marketing plan, and discuss your revenue stream or anticipated revenue stream. So 12 pages, this is all outside of your whole research strategy. And then there's the PHS 398 cover page supplement. This is a pretty simple form, but this is where you're answering questions about the use of vertebrate animals, any program income, any use of human embryonic stem cells, or human fetal tissue. And then the part I'm going to spend a fair amount of time here on is the research plan, because this encompasses really the nuts and bolts of your application. It's your specific aims, research strategy, and as applicable, the human subjects and vertebrate animals. So your specific aims, you have one page, that's it, to state concisely the goals of the proposed research, summarize the expected outcomes, including the impact, and list your specific objectives. And this is going to be different from that project summary. So you don't want them to be identical. You've got an extra page here to go into a little bit more detail. And understand that this, I believe, is the most important part of your application. Reviewers typically will read this page first. And when they're done reading it, you want them to like your idea. You want to persuade the reviewers that your project is significant, i.e. important, that you're the right person / team to do it, and that the end result, if successful, will advance the state of the science. Now, there's more to come on this. I hope that many of you, if not all of you, have registered to attend the webinar on January 18th, where we're just going to talk about writing your aims page. The research strategy. So this is either 6 pages for phase 1 or 12 pages for phase 2, fast track, or direct to phase 2. This is going to be the nuts and bolts and major part of your research plan. It has 3 main sections: significance, innovation, and approach. Again, more to come on this during the webinar on January 25th. And then also encompassed in the research plan are human subjects and vertebrate animals. The human subjects is not an easy section to fill out. It's become all the more complicated. So you have to really either have expertise in filling out this information or get somebody on the team or a collaborator who does. You have to ask yourselves, is the work exempt or non-exempt? And there are decision trees that will help guide you through some of these questions. If the work is non-exempt, then you are required to fill out 4 areas listed here. What are the risks to human subjects, the adequacy of protection against risk, the potential benefits of the proposed research to the research participants and others, and the importance of the knowledge to be gained. If it's non-exempt, there are, and we can talk about this in other offline or through email, there are other ways to, or there are documents to help you determine whether or not your research is exempt or non-exempt. If you're using vertebrate animals, you have to provide a description of the procedures, a justification for why you're using that species for this particular research, how you're minimizing pain and distress, identify all project, performance, and collaborating sites, and describe the research activities with the animals that will be conducted at those sites. And then explain when and how the animals are expected to be used if plans for the use have not been finalized. So if you're offsetting it, for example, by a year. Okay, so let's move into a little bit on the review process. It's a pretty simple graphic here where I initiate the idea. You as the small company will confirm eligibility. So you don't want to go through all this work only to find out that you're not eligible for SBIR or STTR. You submit the grant to NIH electronically, and then that goes to the NIH Center for Scientific Review, who does 2 things simultaneously. They assign your application to an appropriate, relevant institute or center who's going to fund this idea if it fares well in review, and they assign it to an initial review group or IRG, who's going to be basically the peer review study section who assesses your scientific and technical merit. And all that happens, let's say you would submit in April, your review would happen in or around July. So the scientific review group evaluates the scientific merit, and then about 3 months later, that application has to go through a second level of review called advisory council review. And this is where every institute has an advisory council or board. The Cancer Institute has a National Cancer Advisory Board who looks at all of the applications. These are not just SBIR, and recommends approval. They're basically concurring with that first level of review, your peer review, unless if something is specifically raised about an application. Then that information is all sent over to the Institute staff, who prepares a funding plan for their Institute director to approve. Another 2 to 4 months pass, and the Institute allocates funds to you to start the research. So communicating with NIH is really important, because this process, while it can seem simple on a graphic, it really can seem complex when you start getting into it. And unlike agencies like DoD, where they don't encourage communication, NIH is quite different. So you want to communicate with your program officer. They're the science administrator. They're the ones who are writing the topics, whether it's for the omnibus solicitation or those RFAs or program announcements. They're communicating NIH's priorities. They're the ones managing a portfolio of grants and communicating with their leadership about success stories that are coming out of the science being performed. You can communicate with the scientific review officer. This is the administrator who manages your grant review. They're assembling all the experts who are able to review your particular proposed research. And they're the ones who write the summary statements, your critiques that you will receive. And the grants management officer, you'll communicate with, whether you want to or not. No, I'm just kidding. After your award is made, because they're the ones who are negotiating the award with you and ensuring that you're compliant with all of NIH's policies and regs. So what do you talk about and when? Well, with your program officer, contact them as early as possible. When you have an idea and you're able to draft a specific aims page, that's a great time to talk with them. You can talk with them about which is the most appropriate funding mechanism, and are you being responsive to the review criteria? Maybe there are some specific criteria that have been outlined. And then they're also the person you're going to talk with after review to discuss the next steps, i.e., are you going to be funded? Are you looking at a resubmission, et cetera? Now, the scientific review officer is the person that you contact after your application is submitted and assigned to a review committee. Maybe you identified some critical missing information, or you have supplemental information that you're planning to include, such as a video. That scientific review officer is your point of contact up until the day of review. And after that, that baton gets handed back to the program officer. And then the grants management officer is who you can talk with about things like budget, change of institution probably doesn't apply as much here, your grant start date, and any grants policy questions that you might have. So there are some resources to enable you to find the right institute center and program officer, and that is through this website called Reporter. It's a way for you to talk to mentors and colleagues as well, but you can search the NIH Reporter for funded projects. You can use this matchmaker link to look for similar projects and identify which program officers are managing those grants. You can review institute's missions and strategic plans and research priorities. And you can review the Institute division and program web pages. So this is a wealth of information that NIH Reporter is providing to you. And so I did a a little search for you. I did a search on digital health, SBIR, STTR, just like this in quotes. And it pulled up a number of grants. I've got the hyperlink here that you can go to and actually click on. I don't want to do it right now because I'm worried I'm going to mess up coming back to my slides, but we could do it afterwards. You can click on any of the links within this hyperlink and read the abstracts for these projects. You can see what organizations were funded. These are just active projects, so a lot of these are going to be 2021. And you can see which institute funded these. So the Office of the Director, Minority Health and Health Disparities, Mental Health, the Aging Institute, Drug Abuse, Cancer Institute. So you can see just on digital health, this topic is spanning many different institutes, 4, 5, 6 of them. I did another search on natural products and SBIR/STTR. And similarly, interesting here that the very first one is a supplement. So once you're awarded the grant, you actually may be eligible for supplemental funds, and they received $26,000 in supplemental funds. Not a huge amount, but sometimes the supplement, there's another supplement further down. Sometimes the supplement can be upwards of, 75,000, 100,000 on a phase 1 and a couple of 100,000 on phase 2s. So by talking with your program officer, they'll sometimes invite you to submit a supplement application. And what's nice is those go through the program officer, not back through peer review. So you don't have to wait for that 7 to 9 month period to get funded. But anyway, this is just yet another example of searching NIH Reporter. And then here's some resources. So the NIH SBIR/STTR website, a link to NIH Reporter for those abstracts of funded projects. It's nice to look at some sample applications that the Allergy and Infectious Diseases Institute has provided. Don't copy paste everything, because these should be your own writing and your own application, but it can give you some really good ideas about how to structure certain areas, how much detail to go into for the innovation section, for example. I've given you a link on the peer review process, and another resource, as I've mentioned, is your TAP team. So Karen, myself, and others that she has on the team. There are more webinars to come, as I said. I hope that you register or have registered for January 18th and January 25th. And Karen, well, thank you all for your attention. I know I went through a lot of it quickly, and we can go back to any of the slides that you'd like to see more on. So Karen, I'm going to stop sharing. And yeah.
Great. Joanne, thank you so much. That was a lot of information.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, it takes a while to actually learn how to even navigate it.
And just to, sorry to interrupt, the other webinars will be, so this was kind of more high level. The other webinars will go into excruciating detail so that you can learn more about your aims. And while the other one is called the peer review process, I've tied it to writing your research strategy, because guess what? The two are very, very closely linked.
Right, right. One thing I wasn't sure you talked about in enough detail, perhaps besides the services that MTI offers, which is, the technical assistance and this hand-holding guiding process, if you will. The Phase 0 program that NIH offers, is that across all institutes or just some institutes?
So my understanding is that is only for some institutes. And maybe others will start to glom onto that idea, but
Yeah. So the phase 0 is guided direction to help companies write proposals as well, right?
right.
For instance, so the TAP team is for Maine-based companies only, and I know that we have companies sitting in on this webinar that are from out of state
Mhm.
and from different states. So one of the resources they could check or they could Google would be NIH phase 0, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in fact, that's what I was doing. I'm I'm intrigued that I don't even see this on their main newly done website. So we
Okay.
might have to do a little bit of searching there for them and share that afterwards.
Excellent. We can do that.
Yeah.
Great. So I would be happy to have Joanne answer any questions. We can get you to unmute and you can ask the questions directly or you can put them in the chat folder.
Don't be shy.
Great. So I know that we're going to talk about registrations, or excuse me, yeah, the specific aims next week. So what is the very, very first thing that a company should do if they're interested in seeing if NIH is going to be a good fit? Should we maybe take a minute and go to the NIH SBIR website? Oh, here's a question. Kathy asks, can you apply to more than one center within NIH at the same time, i.e. NCCIH and allergies and infectious diseases?
That's a great question. So what you can do is when you write your grant application, you're going to target it toward the most likely fit, the one who's going to be assigned as your primary institute, let's say NCCIH. But maybe it's got relevance to allergy and infectious diseases, maybe the Cancer Institute. You can request in what's called a PHS assignment request form, very cleverly named. You can request assignments to as many relevant institutes as you'd like. And sometimes that's 2 or 3, sometimes it might be as many as 4 or 5. And what happens is, so you're only sending your application to one place, to NIH, Center for Scientific Review. And then they're making those assignments to the institutes and centers based on what you're proposing and your aims and other keywords that they're identifying. So let's say you get a really good score after your review, and NCCIH is your primary, but they come back and they say, you've got a good score, but we've got a few others who scored better. Maybe the secondary institute will be able to fund this or share with us in the funding. So sometimes you go to the other institute and say, I got this really good score. Are you able to accept this now as primary and fund it? Or sometimes the program officer at the primary institute will reach out to their colleagues and say, this proposal is really good, but we've run out of money because we're one of the smallest institutes. Are you able to help co-fund this? So that was a long way of answering. You can be assigned to more than one institute, but you don't have to worry about applying. Just use that assignment request form to identify institutes who may have a likelihood for funding it.
And to add to that is, as you're doing your discovery, about which institutes or centers are the best fit or have the most interest in your technology, you reach out to each institute's program director. So you know up front which institutes you want to list on that assignment. So
Right.
that conversation, that dialogue with the program director is important.
And sometimes, I'll be honest, it's not always easy to find that program director. And so we can help you do that. There are ways even through NIH Reporter that we could try, but there's easier ways to identify who best in the secondary or tertiary institute to speak with. And I will say those discussions should be happening early on. Like once you get reviewed and you get your score, the program officer at the primary institute will say, well, it has to go through council review, which you understand. And we can't make any funding decisions till it's gone through the requisite, peer review and council review. But after that, you can start to get a sense of, should I be reaching out, or would you in primary institute be reaching out to any of the others, because they'll run out of funds at some point. So you want to get it transferred as quickly as possible if there's a possibility that they would fund it.
Great. And Joanne, you just brought up a good point about agencies running or institutes running out of money. NIH has 3 due dates: September 5th, January 5th, and April 5th.
April 5th, August 5th, and January 5th.
There we go. So if they're going to run
Or
out
September
of money,
5th, excuse me. April, September, January.
yeah, okay. So if an institute's going to run out of money, they're going to run out of money in the August one, right? Because that's the end of their fiscal year in September.
Yeah, I mean, by August, they're trying to wrap up their books. So again, the earlier that you can understand whether you're going to be funded or not, the better you'll be to start exploring other institutes. And I don't want to mislead you. The program's gotten very competitive. You could tell by those success rates I was showing you. And, back in the day when NIH had tons of money and didn't have as strong proposals, there was a lot more, they called it horse trading. I don't really like that. But just sharing of applications so that the funds would be spent in the wisest way possible. You could find out that, the Cancer Institute says, well, we got enough of our own that were assigned to us as primary. We don't have any extra funds. Where I find the co-fund or the transfer is more likely is with the smaller institutes. Like the Nursing Institute is often looking for really, really good proposals. So these are all little strategies just to keep in mind. The Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute will tell you, we will never fund anything as a secondary, but they will never put that in writing. So I know it because I worked there. They haven't really changed that tune. Frankly, I feel like those kinds of things should be made more public so that even the Center for Scientific Review doesn't assign them. But CSR says, we're going to assign it because it's relevant to your mission. So there's a little bit of internal topic on that.
That's it. Good question. Good comments. Thank you. Oh dear. Did I just lose everybody? Oh no.
No. Oh, I don't think so.
I hope not, because my screen just went blank.
No, let's see. I see a question. Oh, you've already answered. Where can we register for the next webinar? The link is on MTI's website.
Right.
I want to make sure. I don't know if everybody has the chat up. So yes, we will share the slides and the meeting's being recorded.
Yeah, I think.
I put in a question above that.
Jessica, about what? I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just getting nervous by listening to how intricate this process is as a startup with very, limited personnel, and about MTI's help. I know there was help in a lot of different areas. We're also not yet linked up with MTI, but we hope to be. Do I need to think about hiring someone else to help us with this process, or can we just rely on MTI, do you think?
So, and I apologize, I guess there's a volume issue with my computer, and I apologize. I can't seem to raise it any. I would say, yes, it is intricate, but companies do this all the time with just the MTI TAP help, which is our team, including Joanne and myself and Stan with the budget and everything. I think one of the questions I would be asking, or have a company ask themselves, is how good are you at grant writing or writing and communicating ideas? So if your writing skills, especially to the scientific level that NIH would expect, then you could apply to MTI for funding to hire either subject matter experts or grant writers that are experienced in writing medical type applications. Other than that, if you feel comfortable in communicating ideas in that, I think you can do it with the TAP team. But in order to really get a good proposal together, I think you have to understand that it's going to take about 140 to 160 hours.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart. Joanne, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I guess I agree with you. It is daunting to someone first doing this. It's a ton of work, but it's not an insurmountable amount of work. What I think is so important is that you give yourself enough time. Maybe April is too soon for you. But maybe by April, you could have an Ames page developed. Like, I don't know what your writing skills are to the extent someone has to write the grant. We can't, MTI can't write it, TAP can't write it for you. We do a heck of a lot of editing and sometimes rewriting once we see what it is you're proposing. So don't let that part of it overwhelm you. I guess I'd like to understand what part seems daunting or overwhelming, and then, that probably is for any of the people here who are in startup mode for you. Is it the writing? Is it everything from registering your company and getting all of those registration requirements checked off, or is it the actual preparation of the proposal? That was to you, Jessica.
I'm a good writer, but I'm not a scientist. And so, I'll be needing to translate. I guess it's bringing together all the different strands of this process. For someone trying to oversee a scientific process who's not a scientist, then needing to translate that into writing. I don't even know what I need. How's that for a conundrum? I'm sure I can do it. I just need help.
Right. And so when you say you're not a scientist, you might consider bringing someone on as a consultant, someone who can complement your expertise on the team.
Yeah.
People used to always ask, do I need to have a PhD to be successful in getting an NIH grant? And the short answer is no, however, you do have to have all of the skills and wherewithal to oversee that project scientifically and technically on a day-to-day basis. So if you're not going to be able to demonstrate that through your Biosketch and, you know, through other means and through the writing, then I think one of the things you should be thinking about is how can you shore up your team so that you do have that science expertise.
Yeah, I won't be the PI, obviously.
Ah,
So yeah,
okay.
that person will be doing a lot of this as well.
Okay.
Jessica, are you for hire? Are you for hire? I mean, can I hire you?
No.
I got the engineering background, but I don't have the time. I love to write, well, if you could give me a few minutes, I'd like to tell you my background. I'm coming in late, so I apologize. If we can't talk now, then that's fine, but.
Okay, so I'm going to put him on mute for a second while we finish this conversation.
Oh, Karen, you're on mute.
Oh, and I also muted myself. So what I would suggest, Jessica, at this point is go ahead and do a TAP intake form at MTI's website, and we can go into SBIR Discovery. And we can kind of discuss where you're at, what your team looks like, and what you need.
Yeah, okay.
And then we can kind of move forward.
You muted yourself again.
That is so strange. I'm not doing it, and that's what's
I'm
weird.
not doing it. My hands are up here.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go into Discovery and figure all of this out and see how we can move forward. This is very doable if you chunk it out, is what I would say. If you look at it from the whole process, you know, to write a good grant takes, I would say 60 to 90 days on average across any federal agency. So there are checklists, and we can move things about, you know, as to what you work on first. And it is doable, but you know, you got to start somewhere, if you will. So let's go into SBIR Discovery, do the TAP intake form, and then we'll go from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
Good.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question here. Cynthia Talbot had mentioned in the chat that she is a grant writer too. So, you know, she has done some work with SBIR companies and with national companies. So that is a resource that we could use, or that you could avail yourself of. And you could reach out directly to Cindy there. Ronald, hold on. I'm going to put you back on mute, but we need to keep this really relevant at a high level. So go ahead, and did you have a comment that you wish to make?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a little bit about me. I'm a native to the Bangor, Penobscot County region. Maine is my home state, born and raised. I've been in the forest products industry for about 35 years. I've been a structural engineer for about 30 years. I'm licensed in Maine and in 8 other states, and that's growing. I work with a building materials retailer in Boston, and I'm establishing a mass timber industry. It has no shortage of,
Hold on one second. This is not about, this NIH webinar is not about the timber industry. It's about the medical industry and the National Institutes of Health. If you want to talk specifically about opportunities within the timber industry, please, you as well as Jessica and the other ones, complete an intake form at NIH's website.
Okay, can I knowing that, I actually think that the mass timber industry that I'm proposing has benefits in every aspect of human existence. So I'm a building science engineer. Buildings need to be retrofitted. New buildings need to be upgraded. We need to provide new fresh air circulation and less. We need variable air volume control circulation, similar to airplanes do. I mean, that is so. The building sciences is the avenue in which I can, or actually, the mass timber industry is the avenue in which I will implement building sciences in a curriculum for a vast array of people. We will meet people where they're at. I'm largely an employer, and I'm trying to employ people in the building sciences to develop an advanced workforce for the health and prosperity of people. That is the main function. It's just, it's conveyed in products, which are cross-laminated timber, which are built in our regions.
Okay, so go ahead and complete a form at MTI's website, and we'll go into SBIR discovery. I want to keep this, again, very general to everyone, and if you have any other questions, anyone on the webinar, please, do not hesitate to write them in. Joanne, do you want to take a minute and let's go to the NIH SBIR website, if you can do that, please. And Kathy, too, I see your note in chat that you could be available as a grant writer as well. So thank you for offering that. That's wonderful.
Oh,
Oh. Wrong page.
which one do you want me to go to?
The NIH SBIR website.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They've changed it so much. So,
I mean, I might be able to get there. It might take me a second. Oh, the homepage. Yeah. Oh, that'll work too. We can do it that way. Yep.
so is this where you want me to be?
Yeah, but I was actually looking for you to do it live on their website.
I am live. I'm on c.nih.gov.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So where would they find the program topics here?
Okay, so if I go to find funding, and then I go to FOAs.
All right. So the screen is not moving.
Oh, I wonder why. Let's see. Can you see it?
Nope. Resume slideshow, maybe.
I'm not on the slideshow. Let me stop share and reshare. I'm not sure
Okay.
what's going on.
That's strange. Well, here, let me do it this way. I'll share. Oh, there we go. Maybe. There we go.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so let me back up and Okay, so I was on the seed.nih.gov. Then I went to SBIR and STTR grants, FOAs, learn more. Then I went to, then I'm showing here, the first set of links are to the omnibus solicitations or parent announcements. So I can open one for like the SBIR if we want to look into the actual FOA, or we can go just to the topics. You want to go just to the topics? You might be on mute.
Yeah, just the topics would be good, and that's a good place to start.
All right, so these are the topics, and there are 196 pages, which is why I said I couldn't have done a slide for each of them. So here you see the September, January, and April 5th due dates. Now, after that April 5th, there will be a new solicitation released. But I'll tell you, they don't change that much. I mean, you want to keep your eye open for it, but I wouldn't wait to start looking through this. And then what we could do is to search the different institutes if somebody wanted to give me a topic to search on. Or you can just see how it's laid out. So it's
I think
alpha.
at one point had, if we don't get anything in there, digital health. And you could show them where they could find the program directors or.
Yeah, so if I do digital health. Okay, so.
There it is. There's one of them.
There's one.
Excuse me.
So what you have to do once you're in the topic, once you're in this 196 page document, and you can do Control F and start pulling up, you know, for here, 22 different mentions of digital health. You can scroll down and at the very end will be contact information. So here it says contact information, direct your general questions to Megan Ryan. Now this is within the Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism Institute. So that's one place it's showing, but every institute is structured the same way with respect to topics. They list their topics and then they end with contact information. Let's go to another one. Okay, digital health, mHealth, telemedicine. This is still the alcohol abuse. Okay, so now we're into the Cancer Institute. So the Cancer Institute has their listing. And you scroll down, and here's the one that I showed on my slide. And then you scroll down a little bit more, and it says contact information. And I want to say cancer actually, yeah, let me scroll back up a minute. Yep, so Greg Evans within the Cancer Institute, his area of expertise is listed, including digital health. So he would be a program director that you could reach out to and start to have conversations with.
When you reach out to these program directors, we encourage you to have your specific aims, that one page developed. And that's going to be the subject of Joanne's webinar next week, is how to create a strong specific aims page.
Yep. And Greg isn't the only one. It looks like there are several program directors within NCI. Patricia Weber is another. Let's see who else we've got. Okay, we're now in the Drug Abuse Institute. So I'll scroll through. Contact information. Christopher Conrad is listed. So it's not difficult to find them, but you do have to do a little bit of searching. And then Leonardo Angelone is Digital Health Technologies. This is still within the Drug Abuse Institute, because I can tell with this SUD. So he would be the person I would recommend that we would start with, just
Great.
because his is listed specifically. The other thing about the solicitation, so this is the Mental Health Institute, who also has digital health interest. And they say we will accept phase 2B. Now, I know you guys are not, many of you are not in that stage yet, but this is just by way of example. Within the solicitation, the Institute will highlight whether or not they're accepting phase 2B, commercialization readiness, pilot program applications, et cetera. There's not going to be an individual solicitation for each of those programs. You just have to, I guess my way of thinking of this is identify the institute, read through their topics, identify what it is they accept. They all will accept phase 1 and phase 2, but what in addition to that? What about fast track? What about a phase 2B? And then get to the end of their topics and have a contact person.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step, if you will, to look at the topics. And then if you find something and you want to pursue it further, then I would recommend that you go to MTI's website, complete a new TAP form, and then we can go into the SBIR discovery, where Joanne and I will both, I'll set up a call with both of us with you so that we can really, drill down into what your needs are, what your technology is, and then the fit.
Did other questions come up? Because I minimized the
Not really. A couple of people have had to jump off.
Okay.
They thank you for a good presentation. Ronald Rideout is looking to hire a grant writer. So if anyone is interested, they could reach out directly to him. Let's see. Who else do we have? I think that's about it. I'm not seeing any other
Okay.
questions. All right, so we're just a little bit shy of our 2-hour presentation. And for those of you who have stuck with us, it is certainly greatly appreciated. Next week, we'll, as Joanne said, on Tuesday, from 10 to 11:30, we'll be focusing in depth on specific aims, which is the first document that you really need to be creating in order to have that discussion with your institute's program director.
I'm curious, of the ones who have hung on, you can use the reactions button. How many of you will be applying for your very first time through this program? Just do a thumbs up so we can see how they, there's one, there's Jessica, so Helkin, Jessica, Edward. Okay, and then take those down. Then can I assume that the rest of you have applied in the past? Thumbs up. Okay, so you haven't applied yet. This is like a game now.
Yeah,
Of course, they can speak also. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'm curious where they are in the process, for lack of another word.
Right. So how many are really just trying to figure out if NIH is where you need to be for your technology? That could be a thumbs up. Well, we're not quite sure.
Okay, Helgen also. All right.
And the thing is too, you know, you can apply to more than one agency. NIH is just one of 11 federal agencies that participate in the SBIRSTTR program. The institute or the agencies most important to companies in Maine tend to be USDA, that's the Department of Agriculture, NOAA for atmospheric and aquaculture. I'm not even saying that right, but Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is NOAA. National Science Foundation.
Right.
National Science Foundation is pretty good with NIH. A lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, we've seen it where a company will do a phase 1 with NSF to develop, say, a medical device, and then apply to NIH for either a follow-on phase 1 or direct to phase 2. So these are sort of the nuances that can happen. The DOD, you can submit to DOD, you can submit to more than one agency. As I said, you just need to disclose it to the agencies. And then if you're lucky enough to get funding with more than one agency, you have to pick one. Any other questions for either one of us?
Yeah, and just to, so Hannes mentioned Maine PTAC, how helpful they've been
Oh, good.
for, you know, helping with registrations and more. So that's good.
Excellent. Yeah.
And
Brian,
Jessica's.
yeah, Brian Wallace and the team there at Maine PTAC have been great. We have found that if companies try to do it themselves, the registration process at sam.gov, and they mess it up, it can take weeks to unravel it and fix it and then get it right. And we had one company that took almost a year because they kept kind of doing it themselves and they kept getting problems. So definitely use your Maine PTAC counselor to get.
So Jessica's asking, what is it? So it's the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, but maybe you have more to share on the various services they provide.
Yeah, Brian Wallace is sitting in. If he could unmute himself.
Oh, there you go, Brian. No wonder you didn't raise your hand. Oh, it even says Maine PTAC.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm asking him to unmute. But he may, oh, where'd you go? There he is. Let me see. One of the things about Maine PTAC is SBIR is roughly 4% of the federal extramural R&D budget, right? So that leaves like 96% of R&D to be done, to be contracted out, if you will. And so Maine PTAC, who is funded by the Defense Logistics Agency, can help you get into this whole government contracting realm.
He's only like a year or two younger than me. We have kind of similar interests, but the point is,
Brian?
he's just a good.
Yes, good morning. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I was just giving part of your spiel, I think.
Excellent, excellent. So, yeah, Maine PTAC, we essentially assist businesses that want to sell goods or services to the government. And really kind of where we excel is getting people through the paperwork associated with that and just the general registrations. And I know earlier Karen had mentioned, getting through the sam.gov registration process. And that's usually where we, assist the folks who are interested in competing for SBIR, STTR grants, kind of getting them through that first initial paperwork part so that you can proceed with those applications.
That's great. But then the other half is the bid match service too. For the
Yes.
government contracting, which is neat because there are hundreds of thousands of opportunities listed for federal procurement.
Yeah, absolutely. So bid match is kind of our most popular service with clients. And I should say, when I say clients, sometimes people go running. All of our services are provided for free, including bid match. So there's not a whole lot of risk, but yeah, bid match, we basically set up a profile based on your business, some industry codes, some keywords, and maybe a geographic restriction. And with that, we're able to search several different databases, including federal, state, and local municipalities for opportunities essentially that match what your business does. And it sends you a daily email with, if today there's 10 matches, you get one email with a link to 10 different matches. If there's no matches today, there's just no email. And it really helps. I've had clients, I had a young woman who had done some professional development training. And through BidMatch, she was able to find the city of Chesapeake, Virginia was looking to offer like supervisor training for some of their employees. And she was able to, find that through BidMatch and then proceed to submit a bid to deliver that training. And I know she was super helpful because she, was saying BidMatch, basically took me out of having to search for opportunities and instead bring those opportunities to me. I never would have thought to check the city of Chesapeake, Virginia to see if they were looking for leadership development. So that's just a kind of a good example I use for folks.
Right. No, that's great.
That raises another really good point, Brian. So similarly, the NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts, which is one of the links that you guys will get when the slides are posted. So what you're describing is a push technology. So you can actually say, these are the areas that I'm interested in. And as new funding opportunities that NIH releases come up relevant to those topic areas that you highlighted, you can receive those directly. So I've done that with a couple of topics that I know people are always interested in, and it works pretty well. And it's better than culling through. I'm sure with procurement, it's probably hundreds, and it's a little bit less with grants. But nonetheless, it's nice that it's kind of tailored to your particular needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking advantage of those push notifications is great. And you're right, the bid match is specific only for contracts. And unfortunately, there is no grants or funding component to it. It is just for contract work. But yeah.
But I mean, don't say just. I mean, some of these, even some SBIR companies who have moved into the contract space, they're getting millions, I mean, tens of millions per year, and then add-ons. So it's a poop ton of money.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that brought up the thought that we hadn't really talked about is Joanne has mentioned that you could do these push notifications, but there's also a general list serve that you can sign up at NIH's SBIR website. And because the SBIR program is overseen by the SBA, I highly recommend that you go to SBIR.gov and you can peruse everything SBIRSTTR related across all 11 federal agencies. And also you can see awards that have been made across all agencies in your technology. It's a wealth of information, but it's like the umbrella site for all things SBIR. So I'll put that in chat as well, SBIR.gov. And they have training tutorials there, and those are quite good. They're run by Dawnbreaker. And again, the links to every agency's SBIRSTTR page. And with that, unless anyone has any other questions, I want to thank you all for participating in our workshop, our webinar today. I hope you found it informative. Give me a day or so to get everything posted up on the MTI website. You'll get a notification when they go up. And then hopefully we'll see you next week on the second session for the NIH specific aims.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you all. I appreciate you hanging on and listening and your questions too.
Great. Thank you. Have a great Tuesday and the rest of your week. Take care.
All right,
you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I need to stop recording.